Hey Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Nice seeing you guys.
Nice to see you. So today we want to do a customer review. We want to ask you a bunch of questions about your experience with us so far. Be as honest as you'd like. We want to hear all the positive and negative feedback that you have for us. We have a set of questions already lined up. So let's just get started and let's jump on into it. Will you tell us a little bit about your company first?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. TLX Logistics is the brokerage that I run. I'm the CTO over there. We're about I would say, 25 to $30 million company. We've got about 25 employees and been in business, the better part of a decade, give or take.
Okay,
3PL
awesome.
space. Yep.
What was going on in your outbound efforts before you found SuperSend?
Well, to be honest, it was pretty much unchanged for about the past 20, 25 years of outbound efforts. I mean, a lot of it was phone calls, but we wanted to do more emails, not necessarily to close customers in our industry, because you still need to have the conversation. You still need to build rapport. You need that trust. But we wanted to be able to, and I don't want to say like fully automate, but we wanted to take away the task of having to write and send emails over and over to even places we deliver to, right? Like these are great leads for us to follow up on. And it was just taking a ton of time to have our sales team manually writing these emails, creating sequences, following up, and managing all of that through Gmail or Outlook. Just ended up taking way more of their time pushing buttons and not enough time actually being on the phone person to person, which is really what they should be doing and everyone wants to do in sales anyway.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the next question. When you first came to SuperSend, what problem were you really trying to solve? You definitely just touched on that. I'm just saying, you wanted to be less manual work for your reps, more focused on the phone and relationships. But is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I would say that like I've tried a lot of the tools that are out there. I try to test and see what's out there to be able to take advantage of what's new, but also to see what's working and what isn't working. And the more I went down the path, and we used HubSpot for a long time, but one, deliverability on their emails fell significantly in the past, I would say probably a year to a year and a half. I mean, for a lot of different reasons. And we were getting tons of emails that were bouncing. The deliverability was terrible, but also like even just the follow-ups in the sequence, the manual process of having to write sequences, like in our industry in shipping, like you can't send one email 50 different prospects. So in other industries, you can write one email, create a sequence, and send it to a whole list of leads. In our industry, the emails need to be specific to who you're emailing. And the sequences actually created more time to create than they actually saved in our side of things, in this side of the industry. So what I was really looking for to be able to do is like achieve the same objective, but to have flexibility into having unique emails go to each prospect, but they're really the same format, right? So there's a few variables that change, but it's basically the same thing. So it's specific enough to be able to grab attention to get someone on the phone, but general enough that we could automate some of it to a point where we could generate more leads that turn into phone calls, where we could actually work those into relationships.
Ben, why couldn't you achieve that in like a HubSpot type interface? Like, what's the difference if we're just building a sequence that's templates? Why wouldn't you like? What was the blocker? Maybe the blocker you mentioned you can't just send the same email to like 50 of your ICP, right? Because you've got to be a little more personalized. So walk me through. Like, it seems like I could just hack my way, and just shove it into HubSpot, right? Or is that just not the workflow that made sense?
Well, it's a good question. I'm going to answer it in as specific as I can without letting everyone else know exactly how and the way we're specifically doing it, so that I don't just create a bunch of competitors in our space. But what I would say is that like anybody in our space has received these emails or sent them, which is the general email, which is very similar to how people make cold calls in 3PLs, which is, I have trucks in your area. I can do drayage. I can do LTL. I can do, over the road, intermodal. We have the best service. We can do everything for you. Call me today, right? Like that email isn't very effective. It's very bland, and everyone can kind of tell receiving it that like that's not unique enough, and it is very transparent that that's an automated email, that nobody actually did any research on my company. It's not going to make me respond. And the more emails become prevalent, the less effective those have become, right? So the sequences are very good at sending that one email. But what's really effective in our industry is sending an email that is unique to that prospect.
I see.
So maybe it's unique to the commodity they ship. Maybe it's unique to the equipment that they use. Maybe it's unique to the area of the country that they're servicing, and maybe there's a weather event and a hurricane came through or a winter storm, and we know there's a shortage of capacity, and we want to reach specific types of companies with messages that are, I always kind of say it's like you want a bucket small enough but big enough that you could kind of send that email to, right? So it's like if it's too big, it gets diluted. But if it's specific enough that, just for instance, like I use this one a lot on our shows, like pipe manufacturers in, East Texas or West Texas, right? Like now I can send that to a specific enough group, but with SuperSend, I can send it specific to unique variables at that company. And there's some other tools that we use that help find that and research that to create the things that we feed into SuperSend. But SuperSend really gives me the flexibility to send a very unique message based on we think what the likely need or aspect that we could help and add value to that prospect at a larger scale, but not such a large scale that it becomes diluted and it's everything to everybody. It's like you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none, that old cliche.
Yeah, so how I'm hearing that is like there's like this other stack of tools that you're using to automate some of the research and build out some of these like personalized things that you want to inject in an email. And that doesn't always just fit into your HubSpot world, right? You have to be like
Correct.
flexible and the ability to create really dynamic workflows to say, if I want to send this email, I may have to pipe data in from Clay, and it may be for this campaign, 20 different variables that don't even relate to the next campaign. So it's like you need like a lot of flexibility, even at the contact, the variable, and even at the campaign level, but also just have the ability to pipe in the other tools that are making this all possible.
And that's a big thing too, right? It's the variability in the fields that SuperSend allows me to execute on, right? To your point. And like a common use case in our world is like, hey, I want to email all the companies that we deliver to and reference the company that we work with, right? But I also want to reference what equipment I'm using, when we ship there, and when we actually have a truck that might be good for reload. I can feed all those variables into SuperSend, and then I can have it send that unique email to every one of these companies that we're already delivering to, and just say, hey, we've got drivers delivering pipe there every Thursday. Hey, this guy's looking to head to California after there every week. Do you guys have anything in that direction? Would love to be able to jump on a call and discuss that, for example.
Yeah, and you would never store that type of information in the CRM.
Correct.
Like it's not,
No,
that's not what
there.
it's for.
And you can't, the flexibility to even get it into the CRM is difficult, let alone to get it out and to get it into SuperSend.
Sure.
If you're trying to do that in these automated platforms. The CRMs that are built to do that, they're mostly e-commerce, I think, is where they're really effective as opposed to our world.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. The advantage there is just like flexibility. I can be in this tool and execute this at a very high level.
Yep.
What Ben is talking about, we call liquid syntax. So his contacts have so many different variables, but a lot of them are also similar as well. So inside of his copy, he can have one campaign, but he can be targeting like 5 different types of contacts in that specific campaign and be sending personalized messages to those 5 different types based on one of their variables, and he can change the copy based on the variables. So it is very dynamic inside of SuperSend's actual sequence builder to be able to execute very specific messaging.
The context is very similar, but the variables are all very different, right? So I can keep the majority of the message and change the unique variables within it. So it's the same message, but it actually adds value to the person reading it. They're like, yeah, like that makes sense. We would use that. You are here. We do work with that company. This is worth my time to read, as opposed to very bland, general, hope this grabs someone's attention just because you happen to be lucky.
Yes, so it's very relevant personalization.
Yes. I always kind of look at it as like, would I want to read this email or would I want to delete it, right? Is this useful to the person it's going to? And this tool allows me to customize these things at a large enough scale that they're relevant messages. They're not just spam hoping somebody clicks on it.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Why SuperSend and our partnership? So you had options of other outbound tools, but why did you choose SuperSend over other platforms that you might have been looking at?
I'll tell you one of the big things, and we were talking about this week. One, I would say, is the size of the company and the service, right? The ability to be able to talk to you guys that do this way more than I do, to be able to get insight from what you see is incredibly valuable. Most of the other companies in your space, they're just a website and you get a chat bot and you can't speak to anybody. And I used one of these before I got referred over to you guys, and I ran into a bunch of issues. And they were sometimes very simple things that I probably would have figured out. But there's so much that I've even learned working with you guys as I was building out some of these things, where you guys showed me different ways to use tools that I was able to go run with and be able to use more effectively. And that to me is incredibly valuable. Anytime you can work with, and that's why I have a preference for small businesses, because when you can actually work with the people that are building the tool, you get feedback and you can also learn from their experience, which gives you, it shortens that learning curve drastically.
Yep.
And like some of the other ones, like to just give you like an actual concrete example, is like you can spin up domains that are similar to yours. And this is the one we were talking about this week, but like through the other platforms, I have no access to that domain. So like if somebody goes and looks and searches that domain, they're going to find a dead website. But with you guys, if they search the domain that I'm sending from, it is a redirect to ours, so they can see exactly who is emailing them. They can verify that it isn't spam. It's not coming from another country. It is us, and they can directly go and see us on LinkedIn and know that like these are people behind this. This is not just an automated system hoping somebody responds whenever they do. It's far closer to using email, I think, with SuperSend, meaning like it's like using my own email, and it gives me the ability to know what's happening and react if I want to, and also have it automated so that it's literally working all day without me having to literally hit send on every single email all day, or my salespeople for that example.
We were just talking about this before we got into this call, and I think most companies face this. Like when you go into the cold email world, it's a really gray market. It's a bunch of, like if you just Google yourself into this industry, there's many people that are in it in different parts of it. There's, people that maybe look like they have credibility and others that don't. And so a lot of companies get really turned off by just this industry as a whole, because it's like, it's like they don't even want to like step into the pool because they just don't, they're not sure if they like the people that are there. And so you think about a direction for us. And as I listen to things like that, if the company should be able to come into this world, and it shouldn't feel like a hack. It should feel like I came in and I pressed the buttons, and all the technical jargon, the infrastructure, the inboxes, the domains, these are all like just the vehicles to get you to the outcome. And if you're left to your own devices to set all of that up, it's like probably not going to happen,
Well, and there are real costs to the learning curve, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you like a very good example is like I've done this, and like I got to you guys after we had gone through some of those things, right? And one is like, if you just try to do this based on some research, like you can absolutely destroy your own domain, which can destroy your business. Like all of a sudden, like your customers aren't getting your emails, and like people you need to talk to aren't getting them. So like there's that real risk. There's the fact that it's like the industry is fairly opaque in how emails function. Like it is not straightforward, and it's not straightforward for a lot of reasons, right? And I think the third thing is, I think the negative perception of these things is that like I get spam, I don't like it, I don't want to participate in that. And to me, what we're doing isn't spam, right? We're leveraging tools to do literally what I would do manually and have done 25 years, but do it at scale, right? Yeah. I can do research on LinkedIn profiles. I can see company history. I can find relevant news articles. I can find the person I'm reaching. I can find out where they went to college. I can scale that up to 200 to 500 a day instead of me doing 10 to 20 a day manually going to all of these places, right? So it's literally the exact same thing I've been doing my entire career, but I can create 50 of me to create more volume and still manage it personally. Like literally anybody that's responding is getting a phone call from someone on our team. We're literally going to respond as a person to this. It is just allowing us to throw a wider net, but keeping it unique enough that it is actually hitting the people that would want to respond. Like, we can help these people in this scenario. We can't help everybody all over the country. We don't want to email every shipper in the country. We want a very unique set of companies that we're trying to reach out to because there's a reason we would be a fit to work with them. This allows us to do all of those things at a fraction of the time and a multiple of the scale.
Yep. And less opaque, less like black boxy.
Okay, great. So you definitely just touched on this question. How has the way you've run campaigns changed since working with SuperSend? You already just said is you're able to really maximize your reach as one person because what you were doing before was working, but not to this extent.
Correct.
So you know what worked for you and your industry and your business. Now you were able to use SuperSend to amplify that to way more prospects. So on top of that, is there anything else you think that has really drastically changed from running your campaigns with SuperSend?
Well, that is what it's all based on, right? Like, we had 3 salespeople manually doing this for the past couple years, and it worked, right? Like, they're emailing companies for specific reasons where we have assets there where it makes sense for our drivers. Our drivers have said, hey, we run this load for you. If you have anybody in Memphis that has a load going to Florida, for example, every Thursday, like, would love for you to be able to help us find that, right? So back in the day, you would literally have to go and find all these shippers, call all of them, manually write emails to all of them to send that same message to them for that one instance, right? And that literally could take you a day or two to get most of them, right? And you've got to train 3 or 4 people on how to do research that I've learned how to do over 25 years. So it's like, okay, when you have a decision as like a business owner, as an executive, how long is it going to teach me? How long would it take me to teach 5 more people to do this all day and pay them to literally just send emails? And then the next question is, does anybody want that job? Does anybody want to literally just do research and send emails all day? Like, no one wants that job either, right? So it's like, one, it's a win-win-win in a sense that, like, I don't have to spend the time to train somebody. They don't want to do that anyway. They want to be able to be on the phone doing what they enjoy, talking to people about the industry that they enjoy working in, being able to help those people. It eliminates so many of those things, gives me so much time back, gives them more time back, and allows us to do more of the things that everyone wants to be doing at work anyway.
I never thought about the guy that doesn't want that job, but you're right. It is, it's like the SDR job is like a pretty brutal job, but like somebody's got to do it. And if we can, this sort of outreach motion, the cold call world or whatever, anything that gives them leverage to do that like easier is like a massive win.
You've done 3PL sales just once is like, is the point that I want to get is like, you have to do emails manually. You're going to make cold calls, right? Like, it doesn't eliminate those things. It just allows you to be more efficient. So like, instead of me sending emails every 2 hours in between making phone calls, right? Getting to talk to 3 people out of 100 calls I make all day, I'm talking to 10 or 20 people a day, and I'm spending little to no time every other week maybe to set up my next group of prospects that make sense to. So it's just like, it just massively shifts what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in a way that allows, like to your point, it eliminates a lot of the things you kind of don't want to have to do as an SDR and allows you to do more of the things you really enjoy doing, which is what people want to do. It's like talking to other human beings, having conversations.
When I was doing 3PL sales, I often got a response, from like a cold call that was like, hey, just send me an email. Like, I actually don't have time to talk to you on the phone. Short story for me, on Thanksgiving weekend in 2020 at my prior business, I landed Walmart on a cold email on Thanksgiving Day. That was like a success story for me to say like, all right, this works. Even if that works once a year, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it does work, to your point, right? And it's like, we know it works, but it's like, how time consuming is that to be doing that all day? And then the other thing is too, and I didn't touch on this, is like, follow-up emails is really where you get the most traction. So it's not the first email. It's usually your second, third, or fourth. And now you're sitting in your CRM all day going, when did I send the last email? Okay, go back to that email, find it, send them a follow-up. Is it a thread, or am I going to send them a new email? Did they read the last one? All of that is in one interface with SuperSend. So like, you can just what went to who, when, and pick up the conversation where it needs to happen. You're
going to love our new inbox that's coming out on Monday. Completely redesigned and light years ahead of where it's at today. So what you just said actually gets 100 times better.
That's awesome.
All I wanted to add is that Because you are the expert in what you're doing, why would you want somebody who's not as expert as you to be writing your emails? It's faster for you to do it. And if you can replicate yourself, you know that you probably would get more responses to the emails that you craft because you're experienced and you know what your customers will respond to. So when you take that friction away from your team, it only helps your team perform better and helps them focus on what they're good at, which is being on the phone and building relationships. Whereas it's very easy for you and not as time consuming for you to create the campaigns. So although you might not, maybe nobody wants to create the campaigns, but it's your business, your success. If you know that what you're creating is good and will get responses, then why not help your team out and do it for them?
Correct. I mean, I think you said that. I wouldn't disagree with anything that you just said, right? Like, it is really hard to change someone's behavior. And if they've been sending certain emails or a certain way and they've got some success, even if you can show them with examples how a little change gets better responses, getting them to actually do that consistently takes a very long time. In any position, in any job, no matter what human beings do, like, behavioral change is difficult and takes time. And to your point, if you know what to change and you can just do it for them and then feed them the leads, it's a lot easier and a lot faster.
I'm just thinking back to when I was writing scripts and giving scripts to our team on cold calls. I'm like, I used to book like 20 meetings a month with my cold call scripts. Like, believe me, you want to use this. And we would just re-listen to calls and be like, where's the script at?
Not one word of it. And that it's a really good example because there's a lot of correlation, I think, with cold calls and cold emails in a sense that like they're both communication, right? You need to be able to get to what's in it for them very quickly. You need to let them know why you're either calling or emailing them and not waste their time to be able to get their attention before anything is ever going to happen, right? And those little nuances in a phone call really make a huge difference. Your tone of voice, your energy, what you say and how you say it, right, will determine, is that person going to stop doing what they're doing to pay attention? And it's the same with an email. They've got 100 other emails. Why are they going to stop and respond to this one or even read it if you can't get to that? And those little nuances can determine the difference between, like, do I have a 2% response rate or a 10%, right? And that makes a huge difference in bottom line customers that you're working with. And even when you're using this, reaching out to carriers for certain projects, like I use the same tool to source carriers on things that allows me to not have to send 500 emails and respond to them over and over again to be able to get to who's a good fit for which lane and which project.
Definitely. Okay, so can you think of any times where SuperSend has really stepped in and like saved the day for you, whether it be like a day-to-day process or something specific?
Yes. And I'll piggyback or segue from what I just said. It's on the carrier side. So for anyone that is listening that isn't in the logistics industry, like we're an intermediary between shippers and trucking companies, which means sometimes we are trying to reach shippers that we have trucking companies that want to work with or the lanes match up. But oftentimes, like, we have a large project for a customer. And the one recently was this customer has a very large project over, I think it's like 12 to 18 months with very, very specific types of equipment. There isn't any carrier sourcing software that can give you exactly the list of every trucking company that has that exact trailer. So I was able to cross-reference a list from like 10,000 carriers, whittle it down to 1,000, but I knew that it's pretty likely every one of them had that trailer at one point in time. Well, for me to manually call 900 carriers would take me roughly 2 weeks. To email them all would have taken me 2 or 3 days, not to mention responding to the ones that didn't and just the amount of inbox emails I would get from ones that are just like, we don't have that. Right. That creates a lot of friction and a lot of time, and it's really cumbersome, right? When I can use SuperSend, I can email 900 carriers that are likely a fit for that lane based on where they are and what equipment they have had at any point in time. And I just can send out like, hey, are you still running this equipment? Okay, if I get a response, the next email that goes out and goes, hey, would this lane be a fit for you? Okay, if they hit those two things, it's literally pre-qualifying this giant list of carriers I would have had 2 or 3 people work on for 2 weeks. I can manage it all myself. And I'll do this with 2 or 3 projects. Like I can manage massive lists of carriers where I can take this huge number and whittle it down into maybe 50 phone calls that are phone calls with the right trucking companies for the right project, instead of just spray and pray and to hopefully get enough of them and just create an Excel sheet over the next month. When my customer's like, I need pricing back in a week and a half. Well, how are you going to talk to 900 companies in the next week and a half and get 2 or 3 back and forth with the right ones for the right lane on the right day and the right equipment, right? It takes all of that and funnels that all the way down into something that is manageable and usable and executable.
So it's making it way easier for you to speak to the right people and have warm calls instead of cold calls, but it's also helping improve your relationships with your customers because you're getting them the best prices. You're able to like work with them.
It gets me better pricing for my customer, and it saves the time for the carriers, because the carriers that don't need to waste their time with my phone call can just email. We don't run that anymore. Takes them 10 seconds. They didn't need to waste their time with my phone call and me talking to them for 2 or 3 minutes to find out if they're even qualified. And I use the word qualified, not as if like they can't do anything else for us. And it's not like those phone calls would be useful, but like in this instance, you only really want to be able to, I don't want to say bother somebody, but take up time for even a trucking company if it makes sense to talk to them. So it's like pre-qualifying them. And then when you get on the phone, they know what the project is, they know what you're asking about, and they've already either put some thought into it or done some legwork. So when I get on the phone, it's like, oh yeah, that project, I ran some numbers, here's where we think we're at. Give me a day or two. I have these questions. They come back to me. It condenses what would take me 2 or 3 weeks with 2 or 3 people into like 4 days for me to do all by myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it also is just building better relationships with the people who are reaching out to. Now they had a great experience with you. So the next time you send them an email, they're more likely to respond.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're sending very relevant information to them. You're not spamming them.
Correct. And what it also does is it allows me to build internal lists that are incredibly valuable of the ones that have those equipment that nobody else in the industry has. So like not only did it work for that project, but now indefinitely I have a very short effective list of people I know that have it, that would be a fit for that. And I don't have to go back to the 900. I go to the 60 that I whittled it down to. And now my next one is super relevant, way less effort and way less work.
Now you can add a variable to all of those contacts that categorize them as that special equipment.
We're just feeding back into my CRM. Yep.
I'm like remembering back even to like my very first days in logistics was open your Gmail and send 500 emails at a time, because that was the max you could send
at a time.
And then
BCC all of them.
Yeah, you BCC'd all of them, and then like that actually worked. I'd say like for a while, like 2015, 16, like way back. And then I remember very specifically a day in my last company, February of 2024, when like I went to our office and had 110 employees come up to me and say, none of my customers are getting my emails. And I was like, oh, that's really strange. I wonder why. And what I realized was our carrier team, even though like we had some cool things at that company, like how do you think that it's the thing that they had been doing. Like these guys have been done, they've done that for years.
That's what I did. First 4 years in the industry. Like even like when drayage and things, like there was like a list of 7,000 carriers you could get. Like I would email all of them in one day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you did that today, and what happened to us in that moment was we realized that like, oh man, like our domain is actually blacklisted, like our main company domain. And it took us 2 weeks to like correct the issue. But like we also had to spin up new email inboxes for people like in that 2 week time frame just to like operate our business, right? So
just to keep things going. And like there's critical information you're missing in that time frame, right? Like that is a huge risk and cost to a business.
Yeah. I mean, it would shut you, it technically shut us down for at least that first 24 hours, right? It was very much, if we send an email, you're picking the phone up and you're calling that person saying, I need you to look in every inbox you have to find this, right? Because it's probably in your spam or in your, whatever it is, your spam, maybe you've got like a Barracuda or Proofcoin, it's quarantined somewhere else, right? These are enterprise businesses that we were dealing with. They weren't like a mom and pop. A lot riding on it is my point.
Yeah. You don't want to be calling Walmart, to your point, going, hey, one of my employees just destroyed our domain. So like, we're going to have to text message each other or use Gmail for the next 24 hours.
Exactly.
Not a great look.
Not a great look.
So let's move on to actual like results and impacts. We've heard a lot about the benefits and ease of use and how it's really improved your workflow, but let's talk about the actual results. So, what results have you seen from running campaigns with SuperSend?
I would say like it, and to be honest with that, like it takes some time to work through what's going to be effective and not, right? Like because you're trying to A/B test. Is it my message? Am I emailing the right people? Did I say the right thing? And it really had nothing to do with SuperSend. It had everything to do with like trying to determine, because like you said, we used to do this manually and we know these emails are effective to the right people. But then the question is like, did I actually get the right people? Then the next question is, are they still active in that company? Because when you scale it up, you're looking at things a little differently. And they might have a LinkedIn profile, but they might not be working there anymore, right? And they might not have just updated it. So there are challenges, I think, when you scale anything that took a few weeks to kind of work through and to see and to test small groups. But in this type of industry, right, like you need larger numbers to see results, to see is this effective as it was doing manually. And I would say like July and August, I was really able to get up to the volumes where we could start to see more of those results, right? So I would say they're probably 2 to 3 times our reply rate of what we were doing if I compared apples to apples to like HubSpot sequences. So at give or take 10% of the time, I mean, there were 2 people doing this basically like 6 hours a day, right? 2 or 3 people. To me doing this myself, 1.5 days every 2 weeks, maybe if that, maybe probably like 8 hours every other week. And now I'm probably spending that amount of time a month. And we're getting 2 to 3 times the results we had with 3 people manually doing this.
That's impressive.
Amazing.
Yeah. That's what we love to hear.
Okay, cool. So, you basically touched on time and money and stress already. Curtis, do you have any other questions, like specifically about like results or impacts?
I think like what we have there is good. Like I think reply rate is obviously really subjective. If I'm emailing somebody offering them $1 million and all they have to do is reply, 100% reply rate. I like to think about the results and the impact is like, did your company buy a tool that promised results and were your expectations met, right? And because your expectations could be wildly different from the next company, right? For example, I just talked to a company yesterday that we just onboarded. They own 55 tools across their business, whether it's CRM, email, Gong, whatever. And so they're trying to analyze like, okay, out of the 55, what are the things that are moving the needle, right? And this was one of them. They said out of all the things we're using, like SuperSend's moving the needle because, what we're trying to do is build our top of funnel, right? And they're in an M&A business, right? And so they're reaching out to businesses offering valuations and things like that. And so their expectations for success are, not always built around, did we get a reply? It's built around, are we able as the team today, as it sits, are we able to execute this top of funnel motion that we otherwise were not able to execute the day before, right? And I think that's the level of impact that moves the needle, right? Am I able to keep the team the same size and execute this motion at a really efficient level? Okay, great. Mission accomplished. So like it's a true false, right? And if true, then it's like the next layer is, okay, now that we've built this machine, what is the impact we're getting out of that machine? And if we're just targeting reply rate as of now, 2 to 3x is really good. But in 2 or 3 months, that's going to be the normal, right? And you're going to go, okay, now what's the next level of success, right? Now it's like, are we able to unlock more meetings booked or something like that, right?
Ben had 2 employees working 6 hours a day writing emails.
Right.
Now those employees are solely focused on making calls to qualified business.
Yep.
So he's getting 2 to 3 times as many positive replies than he used to. That's probably resulting in 2 to 3 times as much business as well.
Correct. And I think Curtis touched on something too, right? Like when I look at tech, especially in our current environment, like, and this was in the news recently in regards to like CEOs and them not getting returns on AI, right? And the big takeaway was most of them probably weren't using the tools in the places that would create the most value. And the second thing is those things don't happen in a vacuum. They are interwoven with operational things that need to happen, right? And in a sales process, I don't think you can just pull part of it out to determine, did you get more dollars at the bottom line, right? Because you can get a lot more leads to a salesperson. And to your point, if they're not going by a script, or if they're not saying things that help establish rapport, they all just die somewhere in the middle. That doesn't mean the tool didn't help more, right?
Right.
And in the same example, right? Like, to me, it's like, can you get more done with less time, or can you do things that you weren't able to do, right? And in this instance, like, even if you don't go all the way downstream to how many of them close, like, that is so subjective, because, like, to me, it's like, what can you control, right? You can't control whether a prospect says yes or no. You can control whether you pick up the phone and how you say and what you say, right? You can control how many people you touch every day, right? You can set a lot of meetings. You can't force a person to show up. You can improve it by how you set the meetings and what you say to set an expectation, which is the subjective piece. But there's always the subjective aspect that is included if you just look at the bottom line results. And I think if you, to your point, Curtis, look at, like, is this increasing productivity, and are folks doing more of the things we want them to do? Like, that's a yes. That's the black or white that I'm looking at, right?
Exactly.
Like, are we doing more of the things that we should be doing? Because to your point, 2-3 months, if that is improved, then you move down the stream and go, what are we saying when we speak to these people?
Exactly.
What is our close rate? How do we improve that? Then you go back, well, these aren't the right customers that I'm talking to. They don't need what we have. Okay, maybe we go back upstream and go, well, maybe we target different types of companies for different reasons. It's always going to be a test in seeing where do you need to improve in that, sales cycle, right? From cold outreach all the way to, this is a customer we're working with.
Yeah, and it's just like being able to, like, whenever I think about, like, pipeline, we always had this saying at my last company, we even have it here today. If you want to meet your pipeline goals, you better have 3 to 5x in the pipeline right now. Okay, if you don't have 3 to 5x in the pipeline right now, why don't you? Oh, it's because the inputs on the amount of calls you make is not meeting the requirement, or the emails that you're sending are not enough. The inputs are not enough to get to that goal. And so you're just backtracking. And so I feel like this motion here, it allows us to, from a pipeline perspective, what you're saying is, like, you're able to automate without the risk, putting messages in front of the right people, touching more of the TAM more often. And so you're building the inputs to operate so that now you can focus downstream on those outputs. Yep. We don't have to figure out how to send 900 cold emails today. We just don't have to do that anymore. Those are going to happen regardless. So now let's figure out what my people are saying on the phone. Because if they're saying the wrong thing and we tweak that, then it's like it all compounds, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's good to be a part of that process, I think. And if we can chunk off parts of that workload and make these things easier, it just allows your humans to focus on the things that are actually going to move the needle, going to make them more successful, them enjoy their work more. That's a huge one in your business specifically.
And you also, you can capture this data. Like you mentioned this earlier, like, let's just take reaching out to, like, trucking companies to service a customer in this example, right? Like 10 years ago, you and I would send emails, like we said, you might send to 3,000 different trucking companies in a day. Well, guess what happens though? That person is able to find the ones that they want to keep working with. They may or may not add them to an Excel sheet. Let's just say that does happen. That doesn't get shared with anyone else in the company.
Yeah.
So all that work that one person did is value N of 1. The rest of the company doesn't even benefit from that work.
Right.
When I do this with SuperSend, it feeds into my CRM. My whole team can now use that list of the example earlier of, I took 1,000 companies, narrowed it to the 100 that we should be talking to. Now they just go to my CRM and find my 100. They don't have to redo the work that I did, right? So not only did I create that value, but that value is now able to be realized by the entire organization because it's not sitting in my inbox. It's able to be shared amongst my team so that we can all benefit from it. And same thing with when it doesn't work. Everybody can see and learn and understand, like, where not to do things the same way and why you were able to iterate to something more effective.
Yep. I love that.
Okay, we're about to wrap it up. Just a couple more questions. What has surprised you the most about working with SuperSend?
I would say bespoke service, what I had mentioned earlier, is the fact that, like, I'm able to reach you guys and you guys have been able to help me with things outside of just what your tool does. How and what you guys have learned, what tools you guys have used to do the things that precede it, and to help me iterate on some of the things that I was working through on just the industry, right? To your point, like, I'd spent months learning everything I can and talking to everybody I knew, and 2 or 3 of them said they worked with you, and I was able to get where I needed to be inside of weeks on where I couldn't get into inside of months.
Yeah. Like
Awesome.
hard to find the right knowledge.
Correct.
Well, we love referrals, so thank you for listening to your friends. Would you recommend SuperSend to others?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a great experience. Like I said, it's been great working with you guys, your team. The tool's been fantastic, and you're constantly iterating and improving on it week after week.
All right. And then the last question is, if you had to sum up SuperSend in one sentence, what would you say?
Do more in less time.
Love that.
All right, that works.
All right. Okay, cool, Ben. Well, thank you so much.
No problem.